Welcome back to Lost in Roshar, the ultimate journey through the Stormlight Archive. I'm Christian Colorful Kremling.
And I'm Jimmy Songbird, I guess. Today we are diving into not The Way of Kings, not Stormlight Archive, but another Cosmere novel on a road trip into Warbreaker, Brandon Sanderson's standalone novel that's full of color. And we are going to be covering chapters 1 through 20 here, and then we'll have 2 more episodes following this to wrap it up. Just so y'all know, we are going to be talking about Warbreaker. We're probably going to talk about chapters 1 through 20, but we're also going to be talking about the whole book probably at some point. So if you haven't read Warbreaker, it's probably not a good idea for you to be here, but you should go check it out because it has really cool Stormlight tie-ins. Besides all that, Christian, how are you?
I'm good. It's been really fun to go back to a book I haven't read for 3 years, 4 years, perhaps, like a long time ago. And I'm kind of surprised how much I still remembered, but it's like the little things that you appreciate now on the reread, which has been nice. But yeah, I'm appreciating it more, looking at that more through a critical Stormlight lens, which has been good. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing very well. I was excited to reread this because this is one of the books Sanderson's done that I like more than many of the others, to be honest. So it was cool to kind of revisit it. It's been 4 years, I think, almost since I've read this. So it's been a long time, and I also remembered way more than I thought I had, except for names. Other than Lightsong, and Vasher, I'm really bad with names in general, like in real life too. So I always forget character names. I'm always like, oh, the one with the hair, that one. Yeah. But it is, it's definitely coming back to me a lot more than I thought that it would. I will also say that this was probably a mistake because 20 chapters, I was like, oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. Because I still have a bunch of other stuff I'm reading for like my YouTube channel and everything else. And we've been doing, a chapter a week of Stormlight. And I have time in my week that I kind of, or not a chapter, we do a couple chapters, but I have time that I set aside for that. I have to plan for that because I have a lot of stuff I do. And I did not realize how much more time that 20 chapters would. I don't know why I didn't think about it. It's obvious.
Yeah, I started to worry when a few days ago. I'm like, hey, you good to record on Sunday or whatever? And you're like, I haven't touched Warbreaker. I'm like, oh God. Like, how
I crammed it in there. I had to force feed it down my gullet. It's not that I don't want to read it or anything, but it is a reread. It's kind of a little side thing. So like, I'm shocked by how much time it took to do. Yeah. So, but this is our first road trip outside of Stormlight. So we knew we were kind of experimenting. It does. It's a little fresh, though. I won't lie. I would like to start Words of Radiance. I would like
me
to
too. Hey, wouldn't everyone? And then there's the Cosmere fan that's like, no, stop right there, sir. Where is your
Have you read White Sand backwards?
Yeah. Because I saw that online, because I was a little newbie. I was a young little Kremling, and I thought, you know what? What should I read next? Let's just make sure I've heard about this Cosmere thing. And everyone's like, read Warbreaker. It's important for Words of Radiance. I was like, yep. And then I went straight to Words of Radiance because I'm like, I want to know what happens. So this is my first time doing the quote-unquote correct reading order, where the diehards say do it after Way of Kings. And look, you do get some payoff. You do. But I don't think it's essential. I think if you are dying for some Words of Radiance, go for it. Come back to Warbreaker. It's all good.
I see a lot more people say that than the latter or the former rather anymore. Like I feel because there's people who are kind of get put off. They're like, oh, I really want to start Words of Radiance, but now I got to do this Warbreaker thing, and they're not as into it. And I see a lot of people just encouraging, like what you just did, like just go. If you're in it, you can always come back. And no matter which order you read them, it's going to make the other book more fun, so that it could give you a purpose if you end up meeting Nightblood, and you're like, what is this thing? And then you can read Warbreaker and be a little bit more fired up, possibly. So I did read it before Words of Radiance, and I was happy that I did. Yeah. But I won't lie to you. I said this when I finished. I said I should have read this after Words of Radiance. I felt like I would have. I felt like I would have liked it more because I was kind of waiting that whole book, for. And it is just a scene or two, right? It's not like
it's like it's you get Vasher, which is fun. I think you even get it. Yeah. You get you think you even get a perspective chapter from him in the interlude, which is cool, and he's like training the colons. He's talking to Kaladin. That's sick. And then, I mean, the Nightblood reveal would be so hype if you'd read Warbreaker. But I can also imagine thinking, oh, is that it? Sort of thing. After people are so strong. The thing that I've recommended to friends before, this might be a bold claim, but I said after Oathbringer, before jumping into Rhythm of War, you should read Mistborn Era 1. Just because of how Cosmere it feels, and you might get a little bit more excited by the Navani Rabonial stuff because they're looking at like metals and how it's affecting things.
I say anytime a metal's mentioned or copper, your eyes.
Yeah, and can you imagine if you have no sort of point there? You're just like, you know.
Well, they were talking about resources in Warbreaker when I was reading it, and they were mentioned copper.
Oh, the copper mines! I was like, ooh, hello.
Yeah, I was like, interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I've been, we've had our Cosmic glasses on for this road trip. What did you pack with you? Because I've packed just a colorful sheet. I've got some rope. I've got my breaths are stocked up.
Okay.
I'm feeling pretty comfortable here in Warbreaker. But I kind of do miss the high storms. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I brought a much different bag. I have duct tape, rope, a razor blade, and a statue of guts from the manga Berserk. Yeah, that's what's in my backpack.
So Jimmy's a psychopath, and that's fine. And you know what? Luckily, I'm with him, just to keep this show on the road. I'm in the driver's seat, guys. Don't worry. He's at the back playing with.
Yeah, I'm DJing. Do we have a Sanderson update this week or what, Christian?
Oh, Sanderson update? Yes, we do. Look,
what is it?
New chapters. Chapters have been read to the masses. Now, he uploaded one, which was a Seth chapter he read in 2022. If you want to hear my thoughts on that, I made a video on it like a couple of years ago, whenever that happened. So go there. Lots of stones, lots of voices. Check it out. But he read another one, which went up on YouTube by somebody else, not his channel, reading the first or some of the first Shallan chapters in Winded Truth, which was like, of course, I watched that. And it look, we don't want to spoil that for people who aren't interested, but if you want, check it out. Just look up Sanderson reading new Stormlight chapter and you'll see it. So it's like kind of starting that hype train, and the fact that he uploaded a chapter reader to his reading to his channel shows like this marketing campaign is like just starting.
Yeah, he's back from spring break with his kids. We're about to go into full promotional mode. He might want to do a press tour. He might want to come by the podcast, possibly.
Hey, welcome anytime, Mr. Sanderson. I'll leave Jimmy locked up in the closet, and we can have a sophisticated talk. Well, right. Sanderson, you're welcome anytime.
Jimmy sure,
will.
We'd love to have
I'll let Jimmy have 2 questions. Right at the end after we stop hitting record, and we'll see.
Okay, I'm going to start pondering what my 2 questions would be.
Yeah, what, like, if you had to, the thing is, right, it's like, it's tough because I love this series so much. I would love to meet and speak to Brandon Sanderson, but at the same time, I feel like I don't know what necessarily I would ask. I would just like to talk more about the places we haven't visited in Roshar, to be honest. That's what I would probably ask a lot about. And I really love hearing him talk about writing. So I'd love to hear like how the process for the last 5 books, like how does that look? Because I imagine it's quite different to what he's done so far.
Yeah, I would definitely want to ask him about structuring of obviously his outlines, but like I'm talking about bigger outlines, like the structure of those things, not what they are. I'm not going to ask, what's the end of Stormlight, mister? Like, I'm not going to do that. It's like when people interview George R. R. Martin, like, when's coming out? It's like, dude, shut up.
Yeah.
Like you have, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And that's your leading question.
There's so many better questions to ask.
Yeah, there is. And these are people, anyone that is a renowned author that has done, a lot in the industry. There's so much that you can take from someone, even if you weren't a writer, about how they approach their work, how they stay fresh with it. Like when someone is like that successful at something, there's always something you can take from them, even if you don't do the same trade as them. Like, it's such a waste to not pick apart that process, I think. Yeah. So I would love to hear about like structures, about years and years and years in the future that he's planning. But also, I'm with you about Roshar, and maybe even pick out some weird stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when I was lucky enough to speak to him about Starsight, Cytonic, and Skyward, a lot of my questions revolved around world building, and I'm pretty sure that's no surprise to everyone because I'm like, that's the part I'm most interested in. But I definitely had the bad habit of being like, it kind of reminded me of what you did in the your other series, the Stormlight Archive.
You're just trying to
just like
he's like, I'm trying to sell this one. Could you knock it off, sir?
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, that's great. In Words of Radiance, what?
Line 5 of chapter 2.
Yeah, it took so much self-control.
So he's making the rounds or whatever. Now I heard something from somebody, and I am kind of shooting from the hip here because I wasn't able to verify it. Yeah. I heard something that he corrected someone about saying Cosmere. It's like Cosmere Nexus or something like that.
Oh yeah, it's the renaming Dragon still.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's Dragonsteel Nexus. What is this about?
Isn't there like a Dragon Con? So I think they wanted to not be confused with that. Or something.
See, someone had mentioned to me that it was lore. Maybe it impacts the lore.
Oh, I think he said something like the Nexus will become like a place in the Cosmere that we'll visit. I'm guessing it's going to be like maybe like a big meetup place or something of that degree, like a big old like cafe. Like well, something like that. Like So. I mean, I'm sure the name will grow on us in time once we get what it's about. But that's cool that he's. I mean, I don't know much about conventions. I've never been to a convention, if I'm honest. So
yeah, we had talked about maybe doing Dragon Con, but I don't think that's happening for either of us at this point. No,
sadly not. I'll be here in my little hovel, scrolling through.
A lot of money to go to Utah. No offense, Utah. Beautiful state.
I don't know much about Utah, but all I know is that I totally understand how he made the Shattered Plains after seeing like the landscape there. It is the Shattered Plains. So that would interest me because I'd love to film some like B-roll footage.
Yeah, I looked at the cost of going to Utah and I was like, I think I'm just going to go to Ireland instead.
Is it that comparable? Well, then yeah, go to Ireland.
Yeah, that's why it's so shocking. That's why it's so shocking. It's like, man, Ireland, something, Europe in general, is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and Ireland is feasible, and I have a lot of friends there, so it's like kind of a no-brainer.
And then go. They filmed some of Game of Thrones there, right?
I'm literally going to spend like half the week that I'm there just doing tours, and I'm probably going to try to like steal stuff because they have the HBO set like studio there. So I'm just going to try to steal stuff.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I'm definitely
steal the coffee cup.
I will be arrested. You will see me in the paper.
Crazed podcast host steals.
Crazed man takes Tormund's jockstrap. Like
what? Well, with Tormund's jockstrap being my transition point,
that's pretty strong.
I'm just I mean, I've heard
it's about as good as it gets.
I don't think it's feasible to do a summary, but can you like give us the little notes up to where we're at with
essentially we get introduced to the story, and folks, we again remind you that you should have read Warbreaker in its entirety, but we get introduced to two places that are near each other that do not like each other and that are on the edge of war, possibly. Warbreaker.
Ooh, Warbreaker.
I think people mostly know kind of how the story starts out, but the thing that I love about this is that we immediately get introduced to gods, or I think turned and awakened is the proper terms for this. And then we get introduced to some princesses, some daughters of the king, and the old swap-a-doo, where the youngest sister is actually being sent, who is never anything spectacular because she was the youngest, which is Siri.
Yeah,
which is so funny because I just think of the iPhone every single time I see the name Siri, and I can't help.
I think of The Witcher. That's what I think of.
Well, it's spelled like the Apple one, though.
Yeah, it is. That
is a good point.
Like, I have to find Siri.
The
dialogue choices start coming up.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie, dude. That was really good.
Hey, well, there's 2 voice actors on this podcast, all right? So just Just remember.
Did you
But
do any of
yeah,
this audio, by the way?
no, I didn't. Nothing
Okay.
audio.
The
Was
audio
it
is
Michael
not
Kramer?
Kramer. It's not Kramer or
Oh,
Redding. I was thrilled. I was
I
like,
bet
this
you
is
were.
nothing against those, but like, I'm kind
You've heard
you
them
know,
a lot. You've heard
yeah,
them
yeah. And
so
here's
much.
somebody else in the narrator who I do not know the name of. I apologize. Well, I'll figure it out for next episode. Did a fabulous job. Fabulous
Yeah,
job.
really.
Yeah, I think it's
Is it
really
one
good.
voice
Yeah.
for all the chapters? Okay,
Well,
cool.
I only listened to a chapter, I think, on
Right.
audio. So I didn't do it all on audio. So maybe it's more than one, but I'm like 90% sure it's just the one lady, and she does a great job. It's really, really good.
Oh, nice. But
Yes.
dude, like, just I mean, maybe summary's not the best way to talk about it. Just to talk broadly about what we've read. Like, it's very simple. Like, the setup is very simple, but it doesn't detract from it. For me, it's like quite elegant. It's just like,
I like the setup. I like the premise of the
right,
story very much.
same.
One of the things that I saw on the Coppermind was that the trivia was apparently Brandon had been told that he needs to kind of like lighten it up a little bit, like be a little more colorful because his two prior books were so dreary, which is
Right. Okay.
Mistborn and Elantris, right? So then he made an entire magic system based off color,
That's cool.
which is really cool.
He took the notes seriously.
Yes, and for a better structured summary, a very brief summary of like what the opening is. Warbreaker tells the story of two Idrian princesses, Vivenna. Is it Vivenna?
Yeah.
Okay. Vivenna and Siri. Vivenna was contracted through a treaty written before she was born to marry the God King of rival nation Hallandren. However, King Deladin, oh God,
Here we go.
whatever, sends his other daughter Siri to meet the treaty instead, because it says that on Viviana's birthday that they will send a daughter. And, which daughter?
And he's like, well, yeah.
The
one I don't like.
Yeah. So what do you think about the differences between the two places?
I mean, I know where I'd rather live.
Where? Tell me.
I mean, I want those colors, dude. I want to have my awakened robe so I can look ahead of the line like that guy did. You know what I pictured when he did that? I pictured the Baron from Dune, like just rising with his giant cape behind him. He's like, my Arrakis.
Dude, you are on point with the impersonations today. If you were like 500 more pounds,
yeah,
like I would be like, is that Baron?
But that's what I pictured when that guy like checked ahead of the line. I'm like, this is straight up that visual. But yeah, I mean, come on, who wouldn't want to live in Hallandren? That's way more interesting to me than boring old, Winterfell, where they're from.
Yeah, Hallandren is also just like kind of a cool name. Like I like a lot of the naming in this, except for Tonkfa. I think Tonkfa is like the worst name I've ever read. I don't know why. Sanderson always has one name that I'm like, no,
Tonkfa.
Stop.
Yeah, it sounds like a sound effect.
It sounds like Tonka truck.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's what I think of.
Yeah, but the naming convent, like the little the apostrophe thing that he's got going on.
I'm fine with that.
Talir, that's fun. Like that's a little fun fantasy vibe going on.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. So what? You would rather live back in Idris?
No, I'd definitely be Hallandren. There's no doubt. And I don't know about living under a god king. Like I've read enough fantasy to know that a title like that's probably not going to go well.
Yeah, it's probably pretty rough.
And how about the prologue to this thing with Vasher and Nightblood? I mean, really great.
I hate to be that guy, but like the Vasher chapters were the best. Like,
without a doubt.
They're just easily the most compelling.
Well, he's also shrouded in mystery, and this is one of the things I'm trying to remember his arc completely, and I'm having a tough. I remember out of all of it, I remember Vivenna's the most. That's the arc, and honestly, it's probably my least favorite of the arcs, which is funny. I remember her being my least favorite.
I had the same thing, but rereading it now, knowing what's going on. With these mercenaries and Vivenna and like what the truth is, now I'm more interested. How much of that do you remember? Like,
I don't remember much.
Right. So okay, I don't know how much.
Feel free to tell me. I don't mind.
Blurt it all, like, because like they're so connected to Vasher, which is like what's making me interested. So like Denth is also. I mean, Denth and Vasher are both like returned people from like thousands of years ago, and like. Vasher has his motives. Denth has his. They're obviously like they're totally manipulating Vivenna, which is fun to watch. But their banter like throws you off so much. I get why she's not like fully picking up on that.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that like Denth and this group of people have such a history with Vasher, I'm like really listening to what they're saying. And like we just got introduced to the lifeless dude. I forgot what they called him. Started with C. But I remember that he like, you know how they're saying, oh, Vasher killed our 5th member or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, that member is the lifeless guy that's with them in the room right now. But they're giving him the name Claude or whatever. So I'm like, this is cool. I like seeing how this is all going on, and like they've been hired by Bluefingers because he's doing the whole rebellion from inside the palace. So I'm like, okay, the Vivenna stuff is more interesting. Vivenna herself is not as interesting, but like I'm finally following this plot, like the actual mechanics of it.
Yeah, and there's a lot to when it comes to mechanics, but you said a word that is very important in this book, and that's lifeless.
Yeah,
I've mentioned to you before. So Stormlight connection. Yeah, all right, Gavilar. So check this out. So there's a and this is all credit to Bridge 4 on YouTube. He hasn't posted videos in like a year, but he used to do fantasy hit TV show videos and stuff. But big Cosmere fan. Obviously, his name's Bridge 4, right? Good dude. So he had a theory, and I've talked about this theory before, but I actually went and watched the video since we're reading Warbreaker.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so a lifeless, right? This is something that works with BioChromatic Breath and is important in Warbreaker. Did you know that Gavilar's body is described as lifeless?
Where?
I believe it is in the Rhythm of War prologue. I'll have to double check that. Seriously? But he is described as lifeless. And also it is said, whoever finds him, I can't remember who it is, says that it is almost an impossible sight that Gavilar would be there. And Gavilar also says that he will be forever or something along those lines in the Rhythm of War prologue as well.
Hey.
Also,
I'm just going to read the quote because I found it.
Okay.
From the Navani chapter. She had them show her the fallen balcony where Gavilar had been found lifeless after dropping from above.
Interesting word choice, is it not? There's more interesting word choices.
Okay.
So when you hear husk in Cosmere, what do you think of?
Like a husk? I think of that makes me think of a lifeless, to be honest. Like someone who can be controlled.
But somebody that leaves a body possibly behind.
And they've gone on as like a cognitive shadow or something. And they leave the fused, maybe. Something.
Yes. And I think I'm kind of dipping in possibly to other books here. But
okay,
let's just say a husk in the Cosmere is a pretty big deal. There are people who leave behind husks, okay? They're not dead.
Yes.
Okay. The word husk is mentioned like 10 times maybe in the Way of Kings. Nothing in Words of Radiance. I think maybe 2 or 3 times in Earthbringer. It is mentioned, I think it's like 28 times or something in Rhythm of War.
It's showing up a lot. I just searched it in my ebook.
So it's either that maybe the editor should have found a different word for Brandon to use, or that husk word might be important
because they're using it a lot with the fused here. It's all about the pursuer's husk. A lot of these quotes.
The pursuer's husk. Yes. Yeah. Now we're getting in
his body as a husk. Yeah. Wait, leaving behind a lifeless husk. Here we go. All right.
What happened to Gavilar? He was casted into a statue.
Hey, in a trance, Navani walked back to the larder and the cold husk of Gavilar, his discarded shell. What?
Interesting, is it not? And then he was soul casted into a statue. So is it possible? Is it possible that someone could use Gavilar with BioChromatic Breath in the tournament of the champion tournament or the fight or whatever?
I mean, that would be sick.
And wouldn't it be interesting to see Gavilar come back and fight Dalinar after Dalinar's found out how Navani was treated?
Hell yes.
I'm just asking questions, brother.
Look.
Those are some interesting word choices by Brandon.
I know. And I know some people are typing their like well actuallys and their lifeless doing that. But like thematically and like for the story, a clash between those two brothers again would be very satisfying to watch.
I think it would be really, really interesting.
I just feel like there is an opportunity for lifeless to, or something of that sort, to show up in Stormlight.
I think there is also just there's many questions about like who's going to be on what side, what could happen. I've heard about corrupted Kaladin. I've been looking at that theory lately, which is interesting because Wit says something like, do you know the hearts of the people that are on your side? Or like, do you trust the hearts of the people on your side? And Yasna says no, or she doesn't answer him. And Wit's like, smart girl. And then there is some sort of line in Rhythm of War where Odium, in the contract, it basically says that Odium can't know the hearts of people, even though he could know like who's on what side. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and I know I'm throwing around like loose leaves here. Like I understand that, but I just feel like not knowing the heart of who. Like, man, what if Gavilar's there? What if someone uses Gavilar as a figurehead or something? You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like, look.
The Husk thing's crazy.
We all don't like the baby champion theory anymore, even though I secretly kind of like talking about it. But let's all agree, Sanderson, he likes to bring some people back, and he does. Gavilar guy, pretty important.
Well, Eshonai is also alive. Like we know that, right?
Well, I think it's up for debate.
No, she's in that chasm, the chasm fiend at the end of Rhythm of War.
Well, I got to reread that because I remember thinking initially. I remember just being like, oh, is that Eshonai or something? But like, I got to reread that.
I personally thought that she was alive at the end of Rhythm of War. I should say she is in the Great Shell. So again, remember, if we could do that for the part of Fendi, we're moving things around, putting them in stuff, and
I'm sure
Gavilar statue. Ooh.
For the Cosmere fans out there, I'm sure he was highly invested, which is probably relevant. But yeah, hey, look, I was wondering how long it would take for you to drop in the Gavilar lifeless theory.
I mean, that's what people are excited for, right? Like people want to hear how it's all connected.
Very interesting. I mean, look, you know what? I've given Sando a lot of flack for like the numerical values of his magic. Sometimes I can get thrown off a little. For some reason in Warbreaker, it doesn't bother me at all. I love the breath system. I love seeing what you get.
Yeah, in the prologue, he does, he always does the video game tutorial in his books. And I like this video game tutorial more than Mistborn and Stormlight even. I know that's a big statement, but like, I like the way he introduces this magic system the most because you have all this, you have him like doing breaths and they're kind of explaining it. And it does feel a little bit clinical. It does, like a little info dumpy, but all at the same time, you get this very explained thing where you're going to get more details and we're going to be structured. But at the exact same time, in the exact same chapter, you get Nightblood, who makes no sense.
Oh my, I know,
and that's what I love. Like, it is chaotic, and you're like, whoa, what's this? Like this stuff over here, we'll get a handle on this. What is this Nightblood? He's telepathically speaking to Vasher, and he's just barely open.
Dude, like the way like he let them pick up the sword, and then he finds them all dead, and the sword's like, hey man, I did good. Nightblood is so good. I was so sad that there's like maybe 2 Nightblood scenes in these first 20 chapters. I want so much more.
Yes, and it's a great callback to the fantasy genre. I mean, there's been many swords that have done spectacular things. Stormbringer from Elric and Melnibone is on my mind. I love a good magical sword, but this one's dastardly.
Yeah, this one, like for me, this is like the best comedy of Sanderson is whenever Nightblood's just talking nonsense.
I do think this is Sanderson's best comedy.
Yeah.
This book in general, Lightsong, is legitimately enjoyable to read.
Yeah, right.
Whenever he says he can't get drunk, he's like, why are you trying to, like, you can't get drunk? Just so you know, like, you can't get drunk. He's like, yeah, but I can pretend. Fair.
Yeah, like everything.
And then he's like, I'm going to go out in the woods. There's no wine in the woods. I'll ferment something. Like, to me, that was funny. I find Lightsong very humorous. And also the premise of this, there's a lot of good ideas in Warbreaker. Like, just
so many
face
good
value.
ideas.
Very good ideas. Lightsong being a god who doesn't believe in himself is so I love it, dude. I love it. It's actually something I wouldn't mind someone taking and doing like a darker spin on it. Like I would love to see someone like maybe a Joe Abercrombie or a R. Scott Baker do something with it, because I think that there's also like a ton of bleak places you could go with it. But the way it's presented here, and almost this kind of lighthearted, like,
yeah,
I don't know if I'm God. Like, it was actually very entertaining to me, because if you are a god, maybe you would be that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to use the word petty, but like you'd be like that introspective. Like, why wouldn't you question it? You got nothing else going on.
Yeah. You really don't, because you're stuck up there. And when he realizes that Scoot like knew him, he's like, "Oh, you knew me. Tell me something."
How did I die?
You know what it reminded me of? You're gonna love this. Severance, right?
Ooh,
right. Totally reminded me of. I'm also rewatching it right now.
Great television show for those who don't have no idea what we're talking about on Apple TV.
For people who don't know, the premise of Severance is you split your memories between work and home. So that's why I thought of the returned gods, because like they don't know anything of their previous life and how they died and why they, have been brought back. And he's like, every day he's like, "Oh, what did I do? Did I have a wife? Like, you knew me?" Like, this is very reminiscent of Severance, trying to figure out the other half of your life. But yeah, Lightsong I found really entertaining and funny as well. But then you do get a touch of that darkness when you see these people like petitioning for him to give up his breath, and he's got like dying children in front of him, and he's just like, "No." And that is rough. That is very rough. But yeah, there's so much potential to take this idea.
You could write a whole series on it. I mean, it's very interesting. So that's the one thing I got to say about Warbreaker. I think it might be my favorite Sanderson idea concentration. Like the concentration of ideas in this book worked for me more than maybe in any of his other stuff, actually. Like I really, really love it. And most of it hits for me too. I like this book.
And Awakening is just inherently fun fantasy.
Yes.
Just like, it's just like Aladdin, it's like the rug taking on human form. It's just fun. How is that not fun? And like when he's escaping and like the flag makes like a hand and carries him down, like, come on, this is sick. This is just so
almost
enjoyable.
Reminds me like slightly of Philip K. Dick's book Ubik, where everything asks you for money. So if you're like, "Oh, I'm going to go through this door," the door's like $5, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm going to open my drawer, $5," and it's like, dude, come on. It's like, if you don't give me my $5, I will report you.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, it gave us like a life. I think I always feel like PKD went to a Ocean City, Maryland, and got charged for every little thing at the beach, and was like pissed off when he wrote the story. But it's like kind of the same, putting lifelike actions or animations to something that is lifeless opens up a lot of possibilities, and it's a really cool way to flex the imagination. And I love Awakening. I think it's great. I love this magic system. It's colorful, which is great. And how about these illustrations? Do you have a leatherbound?
Yeah, the leatherbound is beautiful.
It's my favorite leatherbound.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you.
Good.
Just the first letters of each chapter is like a work of art.
Yes, and some of the pictures, the God King.
Oh, that looks straight up like Sistine Chapel, like imagery.
It's almost humorous because
I know, right?
Which is like, kind of what it feels like, though.
It's like the style of painting. Yeah, it's like this Renaissance epic realism, and I'm just it's so that's what there's so much about Warbreaker that I love. The world, the magic, just the reverent, like these gods are so cool. Like the way he was described, Susebron, when he came out, and like the air was bending around him, and all these rainbow effects are going off. I'm like, this guy's insane. This is crazy.
Yeah, dude.
But we've talked a bit of flack about the Vivenna, but I will say I really enjoyed the Siri chapters.
I mean, Siri is our guideline into how weird everything is, because we have Lightsong, who is explaining stuff to us, but he's a god. Yeah. And we shouldn't be able to it's fun to relate to him, but Siri is our eyes as the reader of being ignorant to a lot of the way things work. And we've kind of been painted with expectations while we're going to Hallandren, but she is realizing that a lot of the reality is different, and that this is not a super safe place, and that there is a lot of maneuvering going on. So she's just as lost as we are, which makes her a fun character to follow around, I think. Here's a question. What's Sanderson's obsession with women being able to read and men not?
This is
towards the end, like almost the very end of these 20 chapters, we see that she's going to be reading and the God King doesn't know how to read really, and he's like, oh, she is dangerous. I'm like, dude, Sanderson, what is up with this? I don't get it.
Man, I got so excited when the first letter, she's like, this is Shash, which is like the brand Kaladin has, and then I found out it's just a coincidence and he likes it.
Yeah, we had an email. Someone sent in and was like, dude, Shash, I found it. And then they sent another email and they're like, unfortunately, I've already found that.
I still had the ping of excitement. That's how much this
it jumped off the page.
All of my theories.
It definitely jumped off the page. There's no doubt about
it. It just feels right. But yeah, okay. Coincidence. But yeah, look, the whole idea of this super powerful god that's basically been like nerfed. He can't use all these powers is very interesting, because I remember thinking like, what is up with this guy? This is terrifying. Him just sitting in the corner with these beady eyes,
right, from Mistborn or whatever.
Yeah, there's like a twist to it, but I remember being so like, it was so daunting, those initial chapters of Siri going in there, just like bowing all night. I'm like, this is so messed up. And then he's just like, can you read me a book? Like you just immediately relax, like, oh, we can work with this. Okay, cool.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a commentary there about like, the gods that are supposed to be, the most powerful, whatever, are manipulated or used the wrong way by people who are following that. You know what I mean? Like, there's that. There's definitely that. There's a power in people who are following or worshiping or organizing that does not belong to just the god. So,
yes, the most dangerous people are just people, people behind the scenes pulling the strings.
Yes.
Look, past this point, I'm a little hazy on like how the rest of the story goes.
Yeah, now it's going to get interesting, because I'm and I won't lie, I'll be a little bit disappointed if we read these next 20 chapters and the 20 chapters out of that, and we don't get a little bit like at least some questions of like, oh, is this going to tie in to this or that? Like, I hope we can find
Stormlight wise.
Yeah.
Well, look, for me, it's just like a big old Vasher prologue. Because he's straight up training the royal family in Stormlight. That's extremely significant. And I looked up into his old mate Denth, and Brandon was saying that he'd been to Roshar a lot in his time. So I'm like, this okay. So I'm listening. I'm listening to what this guy knows. But the fact that they like, these guys were like part of these 5 scholars doing weird experiments, creating Nightblood, like, these guys have a lot of magical knowledge. And I'm trying, like, I want to really just get across like why they're in Roshar. For me, it's like Vivenna is chasing Vasher, as far as I remember. But
yeah, so we can't forget Vivenna is in Stormlight. She's the,
I also forget
the wall guard or something like that, right?
Yeah, she's Azure. And it just kind of felt like she's chasing someone, and like it just kind of it coincides with our story.
Here's a question: do you think Vasher is purposely having her chase him, since he's known to manipulate?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, it might be obvious. Maybe I'm just forgetting, and people are like, "Duh."
Or like maybe they're looking for Nightblood. Like, how did? Because like, as far as I remember, doesn't Szeth get Nightblood from Nail? I think that's the
I believe so, but I don't want to say for sure. I'm very, very cloudy on all those events.
I'm gonna quickly do a little search, because I think that would be an interesting point to talk about. Because like, how the heck does he get into like the hands of Szeth?
Do you think we get that with the flashbacks? Possibly, is that how we find out? Or Warbreaker 2?
Well, Warbreaker 2 is working title is called Nightblood, so I'd say probably.
I think that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right, here we go. Roshar. Sometime later, Vasher traveled to Roshar, but was eventually separated from Nightblood after some kind of falling out a few generations after the Pankal Rebellion. Sometime before this, Nightblood was brought to one or more planets than Nalthis or Roshar, but when or to what planets is unknown. The Night Watcher somehow came in possession of Nightblood and offered it to Dalinar during his visit to the Valley, Wow, that's an interesting Easter egg. At some point following this, Nail came in possession of the sword. Huh. So, like, cultivation had Nightblood. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see the hands it's passed through and the fact that it's fully like killed a shard now. And
that's Cosmere wide, right? Like that's big stuff.
I feel like Nightblood is going to be like
Endgame,
one of those characters, that shows up even in the Cyberpunk Mistborn. I could see Nightblood cutting some mohawks off, you know.
Here's one thing I wanted to ask you: do you feel like the Royal Locks are going to play us? Like, is there any people on like? Because I know you can make your hair gray and stuff. Is there any old people that were sussed out about on Roshar?
Royal Locks could be interesting. What if I don't know why I'm going here straight away, but what if Shallan has Royal Locks? What if the red hair is significant?
Anger, embarrassment, or passion is what red. Black is calm and control. Yellow. Wait a second.
Jimmy just
remember all the colors? And we were like, these colors got to mean something that we kept finding in the Way of Kings.
Oh. Well, I've been connected it to hair.
Well, I'm just saying, like, maybe it goes deeper than that. Like maybe it's showing itself in hair, but like there's something that's causing that's a deeper, more extracted thing. I'm thinking like quantum levels, right?
I gotcha. Yeah. Like, why would your hair necessarily turn that color?
Yeah, and we talked about how like we felt like there was a lot of significance in the color of things, like purple blood or whatever. And I'm just saying, we got a guide right here that tells us what each color really would mean. Happiness or excitement's yellow or blonde, white, fear, intimidation, or panic, brown, sadden or upset, black, calm, or control. I'm just saying.
And it's like, what does that like? I don't remember. Like, what does that mean to have that? Is the Royal Locks just like some sort of magical anomaly?
I can read it to you. So members of the royal house can change their hair color or cause their hair to grow quickly at will. Normally, the color of the royal locks reflects the person's emotional state by default, but this can be controlled through training and discipline. The ability to grow hair at will takes effort and leads to hunger and exhaustion. Royal locks abilities can extend to facial hair. Only members of the royal house that are potential heirs to the throne have or can pass on the royal locks. And then it talks about how they can imitate gray hair of the elderly, and there's other abilities that are actually linked to this, like returned wearers of the royal locks can also change other aspects of their physical appearance. With practice, wearers are able to change their age, height, and body shape. They don't have as much ability as a return does, though, as they cannot change their physical features enough to look like someone else. So there's no Gavilar stand-in with the royal locks. That's where I was kind of hoping to go. It. And then this is also large here. It says Vasher suggests that all return can alter their appearance to an extent and points to royal locks as evidence that royals are descended from a returned. This indicates that all return could potentially mimic the effects of the royal locks. On the other hand, it has been revealed that Denth has the royal locks independent of his being returned. So there's an exception to the rule. And I'm just wondering if these royal locks could somehow make their way on Roshar and start getting passed around. You know what I mean?
I'd love to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Because surely, like, at some point, someone from Nalthis has had a relationship and children with someone from Roshar, and they would have some interesting effects, right?
Yes.
I don't know if we've had that. We've had world hoppers in the Cosmere, but have we had a world hopper couple who then have a child who would, what if we had a royal locks plus, I don't know, who would be significant on Roshar? Maybe like, Oridon
let's think about this.
I don't know.
So one of the things that's significant about having royal locks is that they have a much easier time learning Awakening. Why is that?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like I want to know why. So the known users are Dedalin, Fafin, Ridger, Siri, Vivenna, and Denth. Those are the 6 that we
very, very small amount of people.
Yes. It's actually insane. Like when you go and look at Awakening, I mean,
Awakening's huge.
It's a novella.
Yeah, like just on the cover mind itself. Yeah.
I mean, it's insane, dude.
Right. And that's why I always wanted to look, because like we're very good at looking for metal in Stormlight, but I'd like to look for awakened objects. And you see it like in the Zahel or Vasher chapter in Words of Radiance. He senses that Kaladin's at the door. which is like a little nod. But it's also what we should also look out for is like color changing around people, or like seeming deeper or more vivid. Because if someone with breaths is walking around on Roshar, probably our characters might subconsciously comment on it.
I mean, Hoyd has breath, right? Like he can do it.
Yeah, right. He does have breath. Breath is because look, it's no secret that breath is kind of becoming like the point of comparison, like the power scale of the colors. Be like equivalent to how many breaths would Kaladin have, or whatever. So I think that's going to be a fun little, because I was a little hazy on it, to be honest, until we read now, and I looked at the back of the book to see what each level of breaths give you. I don't know.
Just big level ups, tiers, if you will.
Yeah, tiers, because it's hard magic, but it feels soft for some reason. I don't know why it's hit that.
I think it's because you can enjoy the book without understanding all the hearts. And this is what I do tell people like that don't like the way Sanderson does magic, is like you can still get a lot out of the book without understanding it all to a T. Like I still don't understand Allomancy 100%, and I just don't care to. I do think that he does a great job of winding in those rules to the world building and the plot, which is why he like has the secret sauce. Like I think that's why it's fun for me to read about it. Like I don't necessarily love how at times it can feel a little bit video gaming. Like it's not my favorite way of going about it, but especially here in Warbreaker, even with all those numbers and stuff, like again, Nightblood exists. There's or the old magic, right? In Stormlight, it also exists. So there's a mixture of that. Like he's kind of paying ode to that still, and I think he uses it pretty well.
Yeah, I think both you and I agree. Like this is when we're in our Sando sweet spot, if you will, where everything's just kind of working for us.
Warbreaker, I like the tone of Warbreaker quite a bit, man.
Yeah, it's the tone that works for me too. And it feels like, it's a bit more efficient than a Stormlight book for sure. And we, some characterization is lost with that, and scenes are a bit more quick and snappy, and, you delve less into things. But the tone is just right. And there's like, you can sprinkle in characters that are quite different, that like just when I'm feeling like, oh, I would like a Lightsong song chapter right about now, and then bam, there he is. And also what happens a lot is a lot of the times in chapters you get about 2 to 3 point of views within one chapter, which is great.
Yeah, it keeps you busy, keeps moving around. He starts a lot of scenes mid-dialogue, which is actually a really good method used in television for pacing of episodes that are a little bit shorter too. So I definitely forgot how much I miss kind of like some of the older stuff that he's done. I know a lot of people are always talking about like, he gets better and better each time, but for me, Warbreaker is outside of Stormlight probably my favorite tone wise from him and voice that he uses.
Yeah. And just, I love the magic and the setting, especially.
Yeah.
Like, I said this in when I think, I don't know what the video was actually called, but I made a video about Warbreaker after I read it. And it's like, I just feel like I'm on holiday or vacation as I read it. There's like palm trees, there's color.
Yeah, there's a conflict. There's a geopolitical conflict, and they're cut off from the high mountains or like the north path or whatever. And like that's a very relatable thing. Like that is what wars have been fought over less. I can tell you that for sure. So, you feel the tension just based on the scenario, which is really cool. And then, the family dynamic. Vivenna, and by the way, at the end of the 20 chapters, Vivenna is now making her way with Denth, right?
Yeah.
And doing this thing. So, everyone's moving around or learning something, and it kind of makes you enjoy the bounce around, the ping pong.
Yeah, and the sisters are kind of having a subverted narrative, right? Where like one was so like, they basically, I'm losing the correct term for it, but you know what I mean. It's like
juxtaposition.
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. Like Siri, the unprepared, happy-go-lucky girl, is facing the reality of court politics and actually understanding this world and the gods and blah blah blah. And Vivenna, like who was meant to be so prepared, has no idea what the heck's going on, is totally can't eat, like she's so like indoctrinated into her own thing, she can't even fathom like what she's seeing in Hallandren. She's like, oh, these colors, bleh. Ugh, what are these people doing?
Also, I think that like her, like she takes a pretty drastic step to go get this, like join this group or whatever. So it's like it makes sense because everything she's been prepped for to this point has been stripped from her. Like her only purpose in life is gone.
Yeah.
So of course she's going to try to fill that void with something else that's extreme.
Right. Yeah. That's a great point. And extreme it is. I'm pretty sure her little friend cops it by the end of the book. I don't think he makes it. Her country bumpkin guy who's like, I don't get it. I think he dies.
I can't read.
Yeah, you know what? That's his problem.
If he could only read. If he could
only read. I'm trying to think of what else I'd like to talk about in these first 20 chapters. I mean,
that's kind of it. I mean, we're setting up the story. I mean, I know there's probably like little details of like how the magic works and stuff we're leaving out, but I think as a whole, like that's kind of story setup, right? Like you get the girls moving. Lightsong is just a walking like complex. Like he's just so weird and fun. And you get the court, you know, obviously there's the court politics, but there's also the politics just revolving around the gods. One of the lines I really liked, by the way, is like Lightsong's like, I hate rainy days, which made me think of I hate sand. It's another thing. But Lightsong's like, I hate rain. And why can't I have powers to make it not rain and control the weather? He's like, well, there's other gods around here. Maybe they like the rain. I thought that was a funny line.
Yeah. I like his banter with Blushweaver as well.
Really good. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
She's like, come on, give me something. He's like, I got a headache.
And also, Lightsong just doesn't want to be bothered. You know, he doesn't want to be involved. And I get it, dude. Like, I don't like it either.
Yeah, he just wants to sit the fence and eat his grapes.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be a part of a conspiracy or a group or, you know, with a purpose. Like, he doesn't want to.
But at the same time, there's this such pressure to give up your breath. Like, my goodness. And I like this whole idea of like all the good ones are gone because they're like, yeah, I'll give my breath up. And now we've just got these like self-serving, egotistical gods who are just lounging.
Yeah.
So, maybe next week.
Of Hallandren.
So I get why like you wouldn't believe in this. It just feels so ludicrous.
Yeah, he is looking at it of how like preposterous it is, and it's so fun to have that POV.
What I will mention before we maybe jump into a Spanreed is I remember reading a bit about this because when I came into rereading Warbreaker, I'm like, I want to look out for the Shard who's watching this planet, right? Because like we have so much involvement from shards in all the Cosmere books, and this is the one where I'm realizing you don't really get any involvement because the gods are like self-created by the society. There's no like, and I even look into Austere or whatever they worship in Idris. That's not based off the shard either. All that the shard has done is she's the one who's like returned people. She like finds them after they have a cool death. She's like, hey, do you want to like come back and like do whatever? And they say yes. But that's the only involvement. So it's refreshing a little to have a bit more of a background shard in a Cosmere book where it's not so like, because a lot of times, you're like, oh, who's meddling with this? It's the shard. It's the shard again. But
speaking
now
I was going to say, speaking of other Cosmere worlds, I did realize that there's probably a pretty solid connection to one of the secret projects.
Which one?
Should I say it?
Sunlit?
Well, yes, but Yumi. Because paintings and the art and like they're mentioning art so much, and I don't know. I just thought of Yumi, and I was like, this feels like there's a pretty obvious connection.
Feels like like certain concepts are shown throughout all the Stormlight books.
Yeah, they're repeated.
Like we see it. Like there are some like
drawing her sketches.
I was gonna say that there's like some constants. It's like when you draw and are creative in Roshar, the creation sprint show up.
Yeah.
So like there are these sort of like laws or rules across all the books, which is fun to see come together. But hey, did you want to open up the good old Spanreed?
We'll do one of the short ones here. We have from Bowl of Hype. I would love a bowl of hype right now with some milk. It says, hey guys, I storming love. I think they said Storming Love podcast, but I assume they mean our podcast.
Just podcasts in general.
Like I just love podcasts. I send everybody emails. I've been rereading The Way of Kings and have been thinking of the theory of how things might take a turn for the worse in Stormlight Archive 5. There's a lot of talk about Yasna and Shallan's chapter icon, and I don't know if this was ever mentioned, but if you look closely at Kaladin's, this looks like an eclipse just before the moon blocks the sun. It wouldn't be showing a full eclipse because the thin line that's left would lose its definition. But this looks like in at least proof of the theory and most of a clue that is going of how it's going to go down. Looking forward to Warbreaker reread. Thanks. So I have always felt like Kaladin's chapter heading, because we've looked at it multiple times and we're like, well, what is this signifying? Like it's almost like a sickle and this thing in the ground. Like, what is this? It does kind of look like an eclipse.
It does, but it's like, I'm just trying to think of what an eclipse
Kaladin is Widowy Berserk. It's Widowy Guts from the hit manga Berserk.
For me, it's like a reverse eclipse because like it's the dark side that's showing.
Oh, maybe his dark side's going to show.
Woo! But hey, man,
confirmed.
Look, there's a few theories about Kaladin's. Whatchamacallit, chapter icon. The eclipse is a new one. I actually haven't heard that before. People have compared it to the Mistborn, like iconography with all the different types of like zinc and copper and that, because it's kind of got that crescent with lines going through it. It looks quite Mistborny. I don't think it is that. I think it's kind of coincidental. I also have spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to find out what the glyph is on the flag. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I don't think anyone knows what that is. And the amount of spears, there's 4 spears plus, I'm assuming the middle one is Kaladin's. But look, the official quote from Sanderson is that it's a zoomed in shot of a greatest scene at play. So is this his like final charge with a flag on? Like it could be any number of things. The eclipse thing happening with like the Night of Sorrows connection, I like, but I kind of feel like this is way later.
Okay.
I feel like Sanderson will leave these mysteries for a long, long time.
Yeah, that's because I mean, we're assuming we get Kaladin chapters post Stormlight 5. Maybe we don't.
Oh, that's a scary. Well, someone pointed out that like we love how you guys talk about Kaladin being like an old man in the back half, but there's like only like a 10 to 15 year gap in the world.
I turned 30 and I became a boomer. Like, I don't know what happened. I just started getting really mad about my lawn. Like, you'll see when Kaladin is upset with his taxes. Yeah,
as we record, you don't see it on video, but Jimmy like throws rotten tomatoes at the passers-by.
Tomato, I love it.
Oh God, give me a break, mate. Give me a break.
Are we having our tomato moment?
Yeah.
I feel like it happens on every podcast eventually.
What's the other one? There's another like, yeah, you guys, you just put such an emphasis. Why are we so stressed, guys? It's just a tomato. It's a bottle of water. But anyway, I think that wraps up for now for our first 20 chapters. I'm keen to see where it takes us next week and the week to follow. We've got the good setup. We've learned about the magic, the characters. We're, walking down memory lane together. But now I think the next 2 episodes, we'll delve deeper into perhaps making some really wild theories for Stormlight.
Yeah, we've thrown out some feelers. We're throwing out some leads. So make sure that you hit us up if anything started to jostle. Remember, I'm sure we got a bunch of stuff wrong, which people will let us know. But
that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, as always, thanks for accompanying us on this episode of Lost in Roshar. Remember, the most important chapter a man can read is the next 21s. We'll see you next time as we jump into chapter 21 to 40 of Warbreaker.
And if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, be sure to leave us a review on whichever platform you listen on. And if you have any questions or theories, Spanreed us at lostandroshar@gmail.com. We'll see you next time on Lost in Roshar. Remember to keep that safe hand cover and hold your breaths.